Namaste friends, welcome back to the video learning series for the web technology. Today we are starting a new block focusing on HTML and related programming. Previously we have learned about computer networks, why they are important and different aspects that make the computer networks. From today onwards we will be learning how the HTML works over the internet and on over the computer networks. If you have not had a chance to go through the previous learning series, it is quite important for this new lessons. So we recommend you to go back and then have a thorough review of the previous lessons. So we are learning about HTML. What is HTML? HTML is an abbreviation for hypertext markup language. So this is a standard. What is a standard we'll know soon. It is a standard for markups, a markup expressed in a language. And this markup is made for documents that are designed to be displayed in a web browser. Now we have learnt few new terms now. One is a markup language, the other is a web browser. The third is hypertext. So there are three things that we have heard so far. We will see each one of them. Hypertext really means that there are links from one document to another document. Imagine you are looking at a web page, a YouTube web page for example. You see that you have many buttons or video links that are available. You click on any one of them, it leads to another web page. Such a thing is called hypertext. If there are links from one page to the another or one document to the another, technically speaking, such things are called hypertext. A language that defines how a markup is to be used for hypertext is a hypertext markup language. The HTML essentially describes the structure of a web page semantically, and it includes cues for how the document is to be presented. What does this really mean? We are now saying there is a markup, and then we are also saying there is a structure of a web page semantically and originally. But then what is markup for? If you take a very simple web page, I'm sure you are all familiar with the internet and different web pages. There are two contents or two aspects of a web page. The data that is presented itself. If you are, for example, reading a book on a web page, then the contents of the book itself is the data that is being presented. The important part of the web page is the book itself. Then there is also the aspect of how the novel or the book is displayed on the page. You have headings, you have paragraphs, you have things in italics, you have words in bold. These are different presentation aspects of the book or the web page. The markup language is essentially a set of tags or so which are used to annotate the document in a way where the browser which is actually displaying the document can potentially display some parts of the text visually different from the rest of the text. It is essentially used for formatting the text, so that when this document is essentially put up for display, the browser can say, okay, so this is a part of the document that I should show in italics. This is a heading, and therefore I have to show it as a proper heading, and this is where a new paragraph starts. So the browser understands the markup, and then it uses these cues to show the document appropriately in the browser. So the markup is essentially used for annotating the document. Why should we annotate? So that it can be displayed better. Now, what do web browsers do? Web browsers, we so far said, it will display the properly marked up document. Now, it will the one of the other purposes of the browser is also to be able to retrieve or receive HTML documents or the web documents or web pages. We can use each of these three terms interchangeably throughout our sessions. A web page or a HTML page or a HTML document, each of them we can use interchangeably. The browsers request a web server, I want this web page. It receives the web page, server sends it, and the browser receives it, and then it understands the markup and then presents the web page to the user. This is what a web browser does. Now, we have been talking about HTML as a language. Previously, you must have studied about C, C++, or other languages. Each of these languages is there is a standards body that governs what the language should look like, so that multiple browsers or multiple compilers, depending on the language, can interpret a particular file correctly. So, one person, a physicist actually, called Tim Berners-Lee, he has proposed the initial versions of HTML in 1980s. Since then, he has proposed few more, and then a few more versions, and then one standards body got formed, and then it took over the development of the language. Subsequent versions got more things into the language so that more things can be displayed better. And then the standards and the language versions of HTML can be a book by itself. Fortunately, we don't need to go into that. The current version is sufficient for us. The current version is HTML5. It has been standardized in 2014. Now, most of the browsers that we have, whether it is Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or Apple Safari or any of the other browsers, they can display HTML from different versions, but it is good to basically use the latest version all the time. In our lessons, we will be covering all the basics properly so that it can be used with any browser. Then we will see what is a client, what is a server, and what is a protocol. Let's take an analogy. Let's say that we went to a shop and then we say we are trying to purchase sugar because we want to have coffee or tea, and then therefore we need to get some sugar from the shop. What do we do? Imagine the conversation. This is the typical conversation you will find anywhere we go to a shop, anywhere where we go to a vendor, where the vendor is offering us a service and we are his or her clients. So the customer says, can you give me 1 kg sugar? The vendor says, okay, here it is, give me 120 rupees. And then we say, okay, here is the money, take this. Vendor says, thank you. We say thank you, and we leave the shop with a sugar bag. Hopefully we are not using plastic paper bags, but this is the typical conversation we have. You can replace sugar and the amount and the weight and then replace it with anything else, but the conversation typically remains the same. So the diagram that you have on screen is typically called a sequence diagram that shows the sequence of events from top to bottom. The very first event is shown on the top. Subsequent events are shown one after the other until the last event is shown at the bottom of the diagram. Now, can you imagine you going to a bookshop and doing something similar? Can you give me a book? What is the book name? Here is the book, the HTML programming, blah, blah, blah. And then the book owner says, okay, I have second edition. It costs 600 rupees. Then we buy it. More or less, all the conversations are very, very similar. There are some additional conversations that may happen. Imagine you're going to a medical shop, you're trying to buy a prescription only drug. What is a prescription only drug? You cannot buy it off the shelf. You cannot just pay money and get it. You will be able to buy the drug only when you have a medical prescription from a qualified doctor prescribing you that medicine. Such a thing is called a prescription drug or prescription medicine. So in those cases, the vendor, the medical shop owner in this example, will also ask you, give me your prescription. That is a means of authorizing you for purchasing that medicine. So there are some additional steps. It's not just give me the medicine and I'll pay the money. Sometimes it is also authorizing whether you are qualified for purchasing that medicine. Very similar conversations happen between computers across a computer network. Let's take an example of a server and a client trying to get a web page. So here we have a client which is nothing but a PC or a laptop or a cell phone which is trying to talk to a server. The client says get http 1.1 host sampradaya.org. So it says get is the important word. So this conversation is depicted using a protocol called HTTP. Okay. What is a protocol? Protocol is just an established mechanism of conversation. We have our languages, which are our version. Humans have our own versions of the protocols. We call them languages. As long as the two people who are talking to each other understand the same language, there is a conversation. Now, computers can also talk to each other, but then there can be different forms of communications, just like humans have different languages. So, the protocols are essentially formal mechanisms of description of communication. Simply say they are the languages of the computers. HTTP is one, and it is meant for hypertext transfer. Right? In a HTTP protocol, the client basically says get HTTP 1.1 and this host. So this is a way of saying I want that file. But the client has to say only in this format. This format is governed by the HTTP protocol. The get says it wants a file. HTTP 1.1 says the client can understand only that version of HTTP, and the host part of the request says exactly identifies what file or where the file is to be located from. Okay. The server says okay, it sends a very long request. There are many other parts of the protocol that are abstracted out in this slide, but we'll focus on very high level conversation. The server says HTTP 1.1 200 OK. What it means is any response code, the 200 is a response code, any response code that is in the 200s, 200, 201, 202, those things indicate that the server is actually happy with the request and it can service. A textual form of that request is also the error or the response is given out right next to the code. Okay. This is meant for us humans. And then it gives out some additional details about the specific web page that is requested. It says that file is created on so and so date. It is a HTML file. It is a simple Unicode, 8 character Unicode. It is 155 lengths of the 155 bytes of the bytes of length. And the server is an Apache server. It's running on a Linux server. And then there is a space, one empty line followed by the actual file itself. The file is a HTML file. We'll learn more. We'll see what this file is about in a subsequent lesson. But for now, this is the communication between the client and the server. Now compare this with the similar communication between the customer and the vendor. They are very similar. There is a request and there is a response. Whoever is requesting is typically called a client. Whoever is providing a service and therefore receiving the request and responding is called a server. Okay, so this is a typical HTTP request and response. Get is the request type here. There are many more requests. Okay, so the client is one who requests, server is the one which provides a service and response, and protocol is a means of communication between the client and server. Just like we have many languages between humans, the computers can also talk in multiple languages which are nothing but protocols. HTTP is one very popular protocol, but there are file FTP, and then there is media transfer protocol, and so on and so forth. There is also a protocol for synchronizing time across different computers, right? Now, what is HTTP? We have gone through a little bit in the previous slide. Protocol is just nothing but a language of communication between computers on a network. There are many protocols, each specializing in a certain need. HTTP is a request response protocol, and it is between a client and server for hypertext documents. The place where all the hypertext documents are located, the computer network where they are located, is simply called the World Wide Web. In short form, WWW. Okay. Now, there are clients for HTTP protocol. These clients are typically called the browsers. We know these are web browsers because we use them on a regular basis. They are on our laptops, cell phones, and computers, whatnot. Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, and many more. We are typically mistaken because we only see web browsers and think they are the only clients. There are many non-web browser clients which are used for HTTP communication. These are used within another programs or within embedded software such as curl. The clients popular are curl and other such similar clients. wget is another one. They implement the HTTP protocol as a client, and they are able to talk to web servers. The clients everywhere, they run on user's computer. Now, there are the servers for HTTP. They are called web servers. Like how we say the clients are web browsers, there are web servers which are also called sometimes HTTP servers because those servers are following the HTTP protocol. These servers are also software, and like how we have clients have Google Chrome and for Firefox and so on, the servers are from different companies. Very popular one is called Apache. Microsoft is also a company that has an IIS web server, Internet Information Services web server, and there are many others. And then, like how we have protocols that specialize in specific need, there are also web servers that are that specialize for specific needs. For example, if you use JavaScript quite a bit on server side and client side, then there are JavaScript specializing servers. We'll get to them when we go through JavaScript and so on. For now, there are web servers, and there are different web servers from different companies. Just like we have different browsers from different companies. Like HTML has versions, HTTP also has versions. HTTP 2 is the current standardized HTTP protocol. It is what most people use. HTTP 3 is the new version of HTTP. It is in the works, in the sense it is not yet standardized as of today. But you should know that with protocols, typically clients and servers implement the protocol even before they are standard, just to get a feel and then just for quicker adoption. Okay, so HTTP 3 is not yet standard, but then there are many computers that already use HTTP 3 today. Okay, so this is all about HTTP. What is markup? We talked about markup briefly. Markup is essentially adding some tags to the document, and these tags specify special processing for some content. The browsers use these tags and then they know exactly how to display the specific content. But when the browser displays the page, the tags do not appear. The markup language does not appear to the person who is reading the web page on the browser. Take an example. On the left, you have a very simple HTML document, the real HTML document with markup. It's the original document. On the right hand side, the same document as displayed by the browser is shown. You can see on the left hand side, there are many things that we call as tags: HTML, body, h1, /h1, p/p/body. None of these things that we call as tags, and then we'll know more about them in our immediate next lesson. None of these tags or the markup is shown in the browser version of the page, which is shown on the right hand side. So this is the difference. But you can see that hello to HTML is shown slightly bigger font and bold in color, because that on the left hand side is enclosed between a h1 on the left and a h1 on the right. It shows the browser knows that h1 is a heading, and therefore it shows the heading properly on the right hand side. Similarly, happy coding is enclosed within P, which stands for paragraph, and that is understood to be a proper paragraph, and therefore on the browser, when what the document is shown in the browser, it is shown in a smaller font. Okay, so markup is nothing but lot of tags, and these tags indicate how the browser should display the page to the actual end user, which is you and me. So it knows the tags, but it does not show the tags to the user, but it shows the processed HTML to the user. This is markup. Now we have seen markup. So our friend Mr. Kitten, he is full of questions. He is asking, do all browsers display a document exactly the same? We said there are multiple browsers and from different companies, and it is up to the browser to understand the tags and display, right? So Mr. Kitten's question is, if they're all from different companies, do they all display the same one document identically? It's a good question, because the tags are part of the standard, the markup is part of the standard, and then everybody should display one page identically. However, there are practical differences. Sometimes some browsers display some things differently, slight differences. For our purposes, for the purposes of our lessons, no difference can be seen. They are all very similar. Okay, but the question is an important one. Not all browsers behave identically. So that's almost at the end of the lesson. Let's see what we have learned today. HTML is nothing but a language that describes the structure of a web page semantically, and it includes cues for how the page should be displayed to the user. Markup language essentially is set of tags that annotate the document, and these tags represent instructions on how to display certain content. The browsers, they receive the HTML documents from a server or from a local storage, and then they process the tags and then display the HTML documents as web pages to the user. HTTP is a request response protocol between a client and a server on the World Wide Web, and HTTP is only for hypertext documents, even though we use the HTTP for many other kinds of documents as well today. So that's all for today's lesson. Thanks for listening. We'll have more lessons coming your way shortly. I hope you enjoy the lesson. Thank you.